Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for Is Your Service Catalog a Turkey, a 30,000-foot view, the customer, provider, or manager. A few quick notes. I am recording this today, so you will receive an email from me no later than tomorrow afternoon with a link to the recording and the slides. Also, we do have a Q&A session at the end. Your phone lines are muted, so please use the Q&A panel. You can access this using the blue square up in the top right-hand corner. It says Q&A and has a question mark. Please submit your questions to all panelists. That way I can review them and assign them to the appropriate person. And lastly, to go full screen mode, you can use the double arrows. They're above the top right-hand corner of the presenter's window there. You will find this helpful later, especially in the demo session. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Don Caston, CEO of Evergreen Systems. Don?
Thank you, Stephanie. Hello all, and thank you for joining us. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm Don Caston, CEO of Evergreen, and with me is my co-host, Jeff Benedict, who heads up Evergreen's ITSM practice and leads our innovation efforts. While I don't know if you can tell from the pictures, I am wearing dinner, and Jeff is wearing dessert. If you're new to our series, welcome. If you're a past attendee, thanks for joining us again. Our goal, as always, is to share valuable information and insights you can use in your planning and activities right now. Our topic today is based on the best practices and recommendations over the past 20-plus webinars, looking at key focus areas and challenges from the customer, provider, and manager's views. So here's our agenda. After a very little bit about Evergreen, we'll dive into our topic, and after that, Jeff will briefly demonstrate some of the concepts we've discussed today in our always evolving view of what we think is a very advanced self-service catalog and portal experience, which happens to be built on ServiceNow. Then we'll answer questions if you have any. So Evergreen is a US-based consulting firm, and we've worked with hundreds of mid-market, Fortune 1000, and public sector organizations to improve their IT service management execution. We're a full lifecycle firm, or in other words, we have both process and technology in one company. We think great solutions require both. With Evergreen, you don't have to be the systems integrator. We do a lot of work in service catalogs and have gotten recognized for this in the marketplace, so much so that many think this is all we do. That is not true. We have deep experience in innovative solutions across all of the ITSM discipline areas. We're also one of the top 4 US ServiceNow partners with nearly 400 engagements to date. But that said, we do view all of this from a perspective of customer-centric ITSM. I laughed out loud when I found this picture, and I think it's an actual photo. It looks like it's real. At Evergreen, we think conventional ITSM is wrong. ITSM has been the same old way for the past decade: incident, problem, change, and a little bit of knowledge. At the end of it, while we may be running better, so what? What about our customer? Are we actually making a difference for them, or are we waiting to phase 2 or 3 to even really think about them? This old model is broken, right? We need to start with the customer now. If we do, it will change what we do. We may be surprised to find that our customer sees little value in what we think matters and values things we may not even be thinking about. We can't know if we don't ask them. We create and use a lot of tools in our consulting work. Over the past couple of webinars, I began offering some guides we use every day, which is this Service Taxonomy Guide and the Services Definitions Dictionary. Today, I'd like to announce another one we're bringing out, Evergreen Service Governance Definitions and Best Practices Guide. This is another tool from our bag, and it covers the roles, responsibilities, RACIs, KPIs, and makeup of a service governance capability and process. A lot of clients have asked about this. With it, you can build a clear, direct governance process model correctly, which you can rely upon to create and manage high-quality, consistent services for your service catalog. If any of these are of interest to you, at the end I'll tell you how you can get a copy. So here, as usual, we have a little bit of idle grounding we look at. Here are a few definitions for today to help us get on the same page. A customer is someone who buys goods or services. A service provider is an organization that provides services to customers, either internal or external. That's an interesting distinction. And this is the same point we make with one of our principles is that everyone has customers and everyone has services. Service management is a set of capabilities that enable you to provide value, and governance is the function that ensures you go from strategy to policy to process to outcome. At Evergreen, we take one more step and put the governance right into the technology, so the work essentially arrives in compliance. Today we're looking at the customer, provider, and the manager. We call these the three constituents of a service. All must be involved and have their needs met to create any truly viable, durable service. And what I mean by durable is a service that is viable over time. The customer wants a great experience end to end. To deliver that, we have to design every service from the customer in rather than IT out. The providers want execution effectiveness. This means we must also build services that are good and efficient for the providers, or they won't use them, but instead will work around them. Last, the managers want governance and accountability, or our services will be poor and inconsistent, which will cause them to fail. We want to design for management needs in every service so we get efficient governance and accountability baked right into the flow of the work. So we'll look at our keys for customers, and the first customer key is designed for user experience. We're going to look at 3 keys by each area and 3 challenges by each area. This requires thinking from start to finish for any given service, the complete experience. There are 5 design principles we use in creating the user experience. They are simple, beautiful, complete, predictive, and leading. And when we started in this a couple of years ago, we looked first to our inspirations. We looked at Google, and we looked at Apple, and we looked at Amazon, and we looked at Zappos, and we looked at Airbnb. And these were sites that espoused essentially these principles. This is what we sort of teased it out to be. And I'd like to touch them all briefly. Simple means just that. Keep it as simple as possible. Eliminate everything not absolutely necessary for the customer's experience. Beautiful, well, clearly beauty is subjective. So think of beauty not just as the look of a single page, but more of as a descriptor end to end. For example, the Amazon customer shopping experience is beautiful. Complete means every page has everything the customer needs to make a decision related to that step in their process. Predictive, this is where you predict what the customer might want based on what they have done or what others have done. It's a delightful bit of anticipation. If you're interested in this, you might also like this. Leading, this is where you make sure you don't drop the customer in the middle, but you lead them to a conclusion based on their choices. Now, what's most interesting is these principles are dynamic. They play off of each other, and they're meant to be used every day. They force design trade-offs, and that helps you get the best possible outcome. So that's a really good thing to have. Our second key is around designing for self-service. For those who may have experimented with self-service efforts, we might say something like, we built it, but the customers won't use it. I've heard that. The question is, why not? Is it because the customers don't like self-service? There was a survey done in 2012 by Amdocs where they interviewed about 3,000 smartphone users in the U.S. and Canada. 75% of them prefer online support to speaking with someone, provided the online support is good. A staggering 91% would use an online knowledge base to answer questions or triage problems if it were good. But for that same 2,900, only 37% of them currently even tried online because it wasn't very good. Now, back in 2010, according to Gartner, 40% of the service desk contact volume could be solved by self-service, but only 5% actually was. Now, that was 5 years ago. But to be honest, I haven't seen a huge increase in effective use of self-service with companies I meet with over the past 5 years. So people clearly want to do it, but only if it's good. And if you believe Gartner, nearly half our interactions could be eliminated, but few really have. Maybe it's not even possible to offer good self-service. But we know that's not true. It can definitely be done, and there are great ones out there. As a point in fact, and you guys know I talk about Amazon a lot, but it is partly because they've done a terrific job of these kinds of things. For the last 9 years, Amazon has been rated the #1 retail experience in the world. That includes any bricks and mortar retailer you can think of, and you can't even talk to them on the phone. The third key is around continuous improvement. Our solutions don't have to be perfect. They just have to be 10 or 15% better than what our customers have today, and they will use it. It also has to be improving on an ongoing basis. This is an example here of improving your customer portal experience incrementally. We can make it a success with customers by making it simple, easier to use, enabling status checking, there's my southern accent, offering a little bit of high-value knowledge, and maybe a few simple high-value requests or services. So it's not everything we want, but it's better. Also, don't forget the easy button. Always make it very easy for the customer to interact with you directly and quickly if they so choose. So now let's look at sort of the 3 challenge areas for the customer. And, as I went back through all the webinars we've done, which is a pretty fair number, there could be a dozen of each of these points, and so I brought up ones that made sense together from my way of thinking. But if you want to get more challenge area points, they're out there in the archives, I promise you. So the 3 common areas we're looking at today, the first one, it is very easy to fall back on bad habits and start thinking IT out rather than customer in. And it's because we've done that for so long, right? But you always have to start with the customer. So if you find yourself making that mistake, back up and start again. Secondly, most of us don't really know what our customers think about our service. Some of us are afraid it's not very good. Others ask the customer to do too much work to provide feedback, so we don't get very much. If we're hiding from this, here is some good news. The customers talk. Everyone knows how they feel about IT except maybe us. So make it really easy and natural for the customer to give us feedback right at the point of service through things like a 5-star sort of social scoring, like you see out on websites. Last, and this is really important, do not make the customer do our work or wait for us to do our work. As we steer the customer based on who they are or the choices they make, we can limit, change, or guide what they see if we think ahead. For example, can we leverage information about their PC to only show them things that are relevant to them? How many approvals do you have for software purchases today? Maybe there are 4 or 5 just because you haven't rationalized it or re-looked at it in some time, which could create an unnecessary 2-week delay and make it more complex than it has to be. So it's a matter of thinking through the work end to end and not offloading the work into the hands of the customer. So here's our first provider key. A complete service experience is end-to-end with high quality. If not, the customer rejects it. A big key to success in building a complete service experience is the interplay between the providers and the customers every step of the way. There's no way it can just be good for one or the other. Both have to benefit for it to work. The provider wants execution effectiveness. They can get this by simplifying and automating high-volume repetitive tasks and creating what we call happy meals for customers, a smaller number of packaged services that meet the majority of the need and can be delivered very efficiently. If we go to the grassroots level with our providers and help them simplify and improve how the work gets done, then they will love it too, and they'll lead the customers to a new way of doing business, which then overcomes the big challenge of change resistance together. If we begin by designing for the customer in a way that they love it and want to use it, we can also get what we want and have it driven by the customer's own self-service actions. Give the customer what they want to get what we need. That's what we call balanced design. Our second key is to make good build decisions. Since it takes time and money to build good services, we want to make sure it's worth it. We have to weigh the value versus the cost and the risk. So on the value side, some of the things we would consider are, is it worthwhile? Does it have a high intrinsic, strategic, or business value? Is it high volume? If we only do something a half dozen times a year, is it worth the effort to build the service around it? Is it highly repetitive? If so, it is easier to automate. Is it simple and doesn't change a lot over time? If so, whatever we build may be viable for a nice length of time. Is it 80-20? What are the three things that are, or more importantly, could be the same in any area and meet 80% of the needs, or even 70% of the needs? This is what we're after. On the cost and risk side, what's the cost to build and run the service? And you obviously see maintain is important. It's not just build, it's the tail, the cost of maintaining, that really adds up. How complex is it? What's the risk of failure? Failure could be a poor quality service, or it could be a service that costs 3 times what we estimated to build it. Doing this consistently with a simple framework for scoring gives us a way to take the emotion and politics out of the build decisions. So here's an example of self-service and automation for a common request, access to box for storage. We've built complete end-to-end automation of the box request based on the customer's self-service selections. The chevrons at the top, the green ones, show the task progress with an additional enhancement. By selecting View Details, that's where the orange arrow is pointing. When we click on that, we can provide the step-by-step progress below in much more detail to the customer, answering practically any question they might have as to status without calling us. IT then only gets involved if something breaks. So here's our third key for providers, and it is building modular services and managing them as configuration items. Excuse me. We talk about this topic a lot. It is important to apply a building block mentality to constructing services and then combine the blocks to create new services in variations of existing ones. This idea does have a challenge itself, though. Each service module, and I often mention this, let's say a financial approval process, could be used in hundreds of services. So service configuration is mandatory, with each service being managed as a configuration item and mapped into any combined services of which it is a part. So here are some of the benefits of using configuration management. First and foremost, it gives us factory-like benefits of consistency, quality, accuracy, and reuse. It gives us agility because we can more easily and simply create new services. It helps everyone involved to better see their role end-to-end and in relationship to their neighbors or their peers. And it gets us thinking, what are the happy meals? What are the 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 things we deliver 70 to 80% of the time? Then improving, streamlining, simplifying, and automating them. So what are the challenge areas for providers? The first one is around rifle shots. Rifle shots are what we get when we jump in and start building services. When we do, every service is unique and reflects the design taste of the individual who built it. It's easy to do quickly, but it is a terrible mistake. We end up with an inconsistent, duplicative, and confusing service experience which customers really hate. Imagine if you bought a vacuum on Amazon and that was great, then you went to buy some shoes and that was terrible. Would you say some of Amazon is good and some is bad? Or would you say Amazon is awful? You would say it's awful. Recognize there will be a lot of pressure to build these kinds of services, but you must not, or you'll ensure your own failure. Point 2, not every service is a good one. People will show up with ideas for services they want built and even money to pay for them. I had one client tell me that their service design criteria was, do you have money to pay for it? Okay, that's a place to start. I don't disagree with that, but it's not a place to stop. Use a service scoring process to weed out poor service candidates and keep your catalog full of high-value services. Those poor services don't reflect poorly on you, on your provider or the person that thought of them. They reflect poorly on you. We can create high-quality solutions or happy meals customers will be happy to use. They don't want hundreds of options. Customers want to be told what is best, given a small variety of choices, and then make it easy for them to buy. I stress this point because IT often fights it. We are so used to providing a custom solution to every request that this will somehow seem wrong. But this is absolutely the most critical factor in simplifying and automating the work of IT. Happy Meals. Now we're going to go to the manager. Look at our first key there, and our first key is to use a service design process. The service design process is a consistent methodology that we use to build services. And this one here is a simplified view of a package for service we're calling virtual meeting collaboration. There is a lot more detail than this, but it gives you the basic idea. We have a description that everyone can understand, who can access the service, who owns and manages the service, and the more detailed functionality of the service. Then we find the underlying elements we need to make it fly, like SLAs and OLAs, cost, and supporting teams. A consistently applied service design process is the most critical factor in building consistent, high-quality services. Our second key is use a service taxonomy. The service taxonomy is a framework for logically managing our services across our different providers in IT and beyond IT. It's especially useful when we start to develop a lot of services that it becomes very hard to understand them otherwise. It's also used to help customers find or search for services or see logical groupings of services based on terms they understand. Here you see two examples of the same service taxonomy. The one on the left-hand side is in a graphical mind mapping tool we built that is easy for groups to use to discuss services and talk about the way they align and how they should be organized and how they should be labeled. And then the same is on the right, as you might see presented in a technology like ServiceNow. Our last key for managers is to build a service factory, or what IDLE calls a service portfolio. We do want to build and run this kind of a factory to use to manage our services over their useful lives. At the front end, we have consider, which is our demand or intake funnel. We talked about that briefly. If you're successful, it's possible you'll have more requests for services than you can meet. So it's important for having that consistent basis for ranking and managing those service requests. Next comes build, where we construct a service. So it sounds strange, our goal should be not to build a service rather than build one. The more unique services we have for more and different customers, the more complex our service catalog becomes. Start by creating a family of simple services which can be reused easily across IT, managed more simply, and then combined like building blocks. Then comes modify, where we update or make changes to a service during its useful life. What's important here are the same questions we're asking in build, making sure any modifications go through a quality assurance and change control process to validate that we don't break existing functionality others are relying upon. Managing service building blocks as CIs in this space is a good services best practice. Last is retire, where the service no longer has value and is removed from our active service catalog. An example of this might be a pager provisioning service. Perhaps you don't need that service anymore. What's interesting to note, though, while this service may be retired, it may be made up of a number of service building blocks that are still actively in use across the enterprise in other services. It's only this unique combination that is being retired.
Don, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. We have lost our Wi-Fi connection, I believe. So we want to make sure that everyone can see your slides. So everyone can just stand by, and because you were about 2 slides ahead of us, I'm going to check the router.
You know, I think what happened is my Wi-Fi switched. No, it's not being joined. Was yours still running? No. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. I guess that's our Thanksgiving surprise.
So everyone can hear us fine, but they can't see your slides. Just stand by, and we're going to see if we can get Don connected. Maybe if we could ask Jeff if we can, if we can make you presenter, Jeff.
Sure.
Perhaps you can make, and Don was on slide the second and third keys.
I'm not seeing our Wi-Fi. Okay.
Can you make yourself presenter, Jeff? I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that because I've lost my connection.
It looks like I'm able to, yes. I do believe I'm sharing right now.
Okay.
So you can manage
All right.
taxonomy.
Okay, we're on slide number 21, which is the first challenge for the managers.
Okay, I'm showing that. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Let's try to get a wired connection and get back in so I can do Q&A for everyone. So thanks for your patience, folks.
Yeah, it's not showing our wireless. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so we're on the first challenge of a manager, and basically this is where you see the technical services manager versus service manager in these blocks. That's the one you're on, right? Yep. Okay,
correct,
so in many ways, can you hear me okay, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, in many ways the manager's challenges are the hardest. First and foremost, it's important to realize that consciously and proactively delivering services is dramatically different than what IT is used to doing. This slide is a bit of a simplification, but it isn't incorrect. You can see that a service manager has a much larger number of questions than need answers to. Truthfully, we aren't even thinking about many of these questions today. These questions arise, though, when you see the service from the customer's eyes. So we'll go to the second challenge, which is slide 22. And you can see this flow here. Every service we deliver is made up of lots of little services. So this is an example here. Let's say I own this service. Even though I own the big service, there's still lots of little services being combined from different parts of IT to make up the big service. Those are those orange arrows coming up into the service line. This is part of what scares me because I don't control those people. They don't work for me. So how can I possibly be successful? First off, I'm now passionately and accurately aligned with the customer. I will get working to understand what they want and figure out how to deliver it better right away. And that's pretty good and can work because customers don't expect a bad service to become great overnight. They just want to know they're heard, someone cares, and is working to improve things. The first two of those can happen right away. To make the third one work, I now become the customer's advocate. Their goals are my goals. So I begin explaining to everyone delivering services to me how important they are, how they fit into the big scheme, and what the customer really wants. I'm creating meaningful mission alignment because just mechanically doing a task is not very emotionally fulfilling, but helping a customer as part of a team, well, that really is. And every day I'll work with everyone, giving feedback, helping them improve, streamlining, encouraging the effort, and making sure they see their part in the big picture. Okay, this is my animation here. Jeff, click the space bar. Did the orange arrow fly in?
Yes, it did. I have service providers in there now.
Very exciting. And over time, we all begin to align with the customer. So we're going to the third challenge. And for the third challenge, for managers, it's a leadership challenge. We must lead IT from delivering siloed technical outcomes to delivering services. We already know the service managers will feel pretty uncomfortable. So here's a three-step process to help us lead this change. Step one is awareness. Right out of the box, what's interesting is this is nothing new. We aren't introducing a whole bunch of new services. We're already delivering these things today, just in the hardest, least efficient way possible. So doing it this way would have to be an improvement, right? That's not a bad thing. The customers already know how they feel about us. We're the only ones who don't, so it's not like their opinion of us will go down. In fact, it will probably go up if they see we're genuinely and openly trying to do a better job for them. Next, step two here, we're looking at experiment. We begin trying things out, we open dialogue, we look for ways to improve, and we make it fun. Because doing better as a team is fun. And we keep it low risk. No one gets penalized for trying a new way. So we also make sure that existing recognition and compensation plans don't hurt our people during this time of their change. Finally, when we are making progress and see things changing, we learn and adopt a new way, determine our next set of targets, and then align goals and compensation to follow them. Okay, I think we're up to slide 24. That's it for our presentation today. Like a good Thanksgiving meal, I hope you're adequately stuffed. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you for the demo and dessert.
All right, well, great. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Stephanie. So I'm going to start where I oftentimes start. I'm in our kind of self-service portal. This is built on ServiceNow's content management system. And then again, this is where our customers can go to consume information about our services. They can submit our service requests, and they can ultimately track those service requests and see the status of those items. I also want to highlight that this is an area where we can also push alerts and other information to our users, such as outages or other prescriptive news and announcements we might want to push, or other highlights about our service health and overall activities related to our service catalog. On the service catalog tab, this is really I'm going to kind of focus my attention today in terms of the defined services and some of the details thereof. This is a place where we can communicate the service information to our consumers, which includes the help, includes our offerings, our commitments, and other relevant information. And the first thing I want to highlight is this page, obviously provides different ways to filter and look at your services, either by category. We can organize these into different taxonomies or different catalogs. And we also have different perspectives, so we can browse by A to Z, or we can also browse by different classifications, like those that I'm a specific subscriber to show me the services that I personally use and consume through my group or role-based associations. Let me go into one of these. I'll show you. I'll go into laptop support as an example. And this page, we kind of call this our service tombstone or service kind of brochure page. This is in essence providing information to the consumer what they can get from this service, as well as contextual actions of requesting help or requesting goods and services that are related to the service or consuming specific knowledge information. So some of the things you see on this page, first of all, you get summary information about what the service is. You see what's in scope, what's out of scope. And one area I wanted to kind of call some attention to, because we'll go through, I'll create some of these in a moment here, is providing different offerings and options to our consumers. And so here's a case where there's really two different offerings. There's a standard offering for all of our employees, and then there's a specific package for our executives. And really the main difference between the two are some additional commitments around our response and resolution times for executives, as well as how we support multi-software application conflicts for our executives. One other couple of tabs worth hitting on, the status tab, not terribly relevant for the laptop service, but more relevant for services that are application hosted or ones where you depend on they're actually being up and available and in use. And as Don mentioned, getting quality feedback is certainly something we care about in terms of our services and how they're delivered. And delivering to those commitments is one thing, but also getting our customers satisfied with how the service is delivered and consumed. So we use this feedback tab as a way for users to provide the ratings, as well as submit comments and ideas in context to the service. Let me go home and let me just, so I showed kind of the health from an individual service perspective. There is also a page that is specific to health on a more macro level. So this is across our full catalog, or we can filter this by an individual catalog. But this is going to show us what are active alerts, outages, any upcoming planned maintenance. And this obviously becomes a useful tool of deflection. If I'm a consumer and I'm having troubles with a particular service, I can hit that home page, seeing alerts and outages. I can come to this page for more details around our services and maybe better understand why something isn't working like I typically expect it to work. All right, so I'm going to move away from the consumer for a moment, and I'll show you some of the pieces or building blocks that go into those services and service offerings to kind of demonstrate that tombstone data and kind of the different pieces that get pushed into there. So where I'm going to start is I want to create a new service. We'll just do this from the beginning of creating a new service offering or new service and some offerings related to it. And I'm going to call this Oracle for Windows. So a new Oracle for Windows service. I'm going to set myself as the owner. Give it a version just for maintenance or planning purposes. I'm going to set our support group to database. So this is the primary group that supports requests and or issues pertaining to our service. Don mentioned our taxonomy and organizing services, so here's where our taxonomy comes into play. I think the best place for this is probably under our data center hosting and database area. The other thing I want to do with our service, I do actually want to charge back and invoice consumers of our service on a monthly basis. So I'm going to set our price unit to monthly. And then some of the other information, I'm just going to kind of copy and paste here real quick, some description and at a glance information rather than type it all in. And I'll just paste that in here. So some details around what the description of our service is, details around who it's available to and requirements. Also notice I've got attributes I can populate related to the features, the benefits, contact information. I will put a picture on here too, just to give it some graphical interest to it. So there's my service definition. Pretty basic information about my service. And the next thing I want to do, I do want to actually create some different offerings. So you saw in the laptop service we had 2 different offerings. I actually want to create a gold, silver, and a bronze in this situation. So I'm going to start with, by default, I have a standard offering. I'm going to actually alter that standard one to be a gold. Really, the only thing I'm going to do about this, I'm going to set its price to $50 a month. I'll save that. And then the details of my offering are really going to come in this commitment area. So this is where I'm going to define what are the specific pieces and parts of my offering that make it different from that of another. I'm going to start with the size of our databases we offer, our availability targets. And I actually also say with gold, you get high availability. And we'll also have access requests will be delivered within 1 business day. And the last one I'll put on here is a 4-hour resolution target for any high priority incidents that come in. It's really 5 different commitments on this particular offering. And I'll just kind of use this as my template to create new. So I'll create a silver. And I'll basically do some of the same stuff here. I'll say this is the same size, not bandwidth, same size database. I'll say our availability target is a little lessened, just 99, not 99.9%. It won't offer high availability for this, but we will have access requests delivered in a business day, and our resolution rate will be a little lower than our gold level. So there's silver. Let me do one more just to complete the picture for this. We'll set this to $30 a month for bronze. And this one I'll make basically the same as our silver, but with a smaller database. So we'll say 10 gigabyte database, 99% availability. Access requests about the same. And lastly, P1 resolution rate will be set to 8 hours. All right. So there's my different 3 offerings. If I go back to here, I will see my Oracle for Windows service now has 3 offerings that we've got defined for this. Now, one thing I'm going to do just to populate some of our dashboard information that we'll show in a little bit, I'm going to recalculate some of our commitment results, which will take a moment or 2 to process. And while that's happening, let me go out here another session. I'll just show you from a consumer perspective what that service now looks like. So first of all, any new additions or updates to our service portfolio or service catalog, we do highlight in this portal. So if there was a new update, we'd see those pushed out here as well. But we also see, in this case, newly added services, just to kind of highlight to our consumers there's something that's changed in our service portfolio. All right, so here's our information as the consumer can see. And here's our 3 different offerings: bronze, silver, gold. I do have an attribute I can set to set orders, so I can put them in a specific order versus gold, silver, bronze versus this order. But we can kind of see, side by side, what the different offerings or options are on this particular service. Right. Let me see if this thing's done yet. It's not done yet. So one thing I do want to highlight that I'm going to go to next is you'll see that there's really no option here on this service. This is this is a read-only kind of service. No option here to say I want to become a subscriber. I do want to order a kind of a bronze level package. So that's what we'll do next once this thing finishes doing its recalculations. We'll add a ability to kind of opt into this particular service and become a subscriber. All right, so this guy looks like it's done now. So one of the things that we have kind of at our disposal or handy tool we added into here was this ability to say, let's publish this as a subscription item. And clicking this, so let's go ahead and click it. What this will do is kind of do what I explained a minute ago. It'll add an option into the portal for users to be able to become a subscriber and select one of the offerings that we have. So I'm taking here to a page where I can alter kind of how this is presented to my consumers. So I can change the description, I could change the icon, etc. But I'm really not going to do any of that. The only thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to alter how it actually gets fulfilled. So I have a link on the bottom here that says Edit Global Workflow. And so this is an editor that we've created as part of this, just to simplify kind of the sequence of activities and fulfillment activities that we want to deliver on some of these requests. And this is kind of my canvas of being able to set up our kind of workflow for the fulfillment of this new subscriber. And by default, it's kind of starting off with just one activity to subscribe the user to the service. So if I were to actually order this and or request to become a new subscriber, basically it would just go straight to closed and would set me up as a subscriber. So I actually really want there to be some activities in here. So I'm going to add some lanes here of sequencing. I'm going to move this guy to the end because I really want some work to happen first and then subscribe the user as a consumer of my service. And the first thing I want to have in here is a, I'll call this Get Manager Approval. So we'll add an approval step for the customer's manager to approve this particular new request. So then following approval, we'll do a, what do we call this, setup, we'll set this setup database access. This will be a task to our database team. We'll choose a particular template to fill in some of the details of that task. And then in my third sequence, I'm also going to do just basically confirm completion with customer, which is we're going to ask the customer to basically validate that this request is indeed complete to their satisfaction. So those are really my 4 kind of lanes of activity to request this particular service. All right, so let's see this in play. So now over here is as a different user, not the service owner. As a consumer, if I refresh this page, one thing that's a little different now is I have a button up here at the top that says request this service. And so this is where I can go. I can say, let's go request this particular service. And I'm taken to a page to kind of walk me through this process. And the first thing for me to select is kind of which of those service offerings do I want? Maybe I want to start with silver. It'll kind of show me here's what you get with your silver package. Maybe I realize maybe $10 a month for gold is worth it for this extra high availability activity. So I'm going to say I'll go with gold. I'll describe my needs, which is ultimately going to provide some instruction to our fulfillment team as to what we need to do. Oops, I guess it should spell properly. All right, and so now that I've filled out my required details, I can now order or add this to my cart. So I'm going to go ahead and order this now. And I'm thrown into a status page where I can track the progress of this request. This is some of what Don showed as far as being able to see where it's at in its life cycle. I do have an option here to go view details, which some of the things I can do on this particular page is, first of all, I can see more details about the actual activities. I can see that it's triggered a manager approval activity. I've also got options here to kind of push messages back to our fulfillment team as well. So I could say something like, let me know if you need more information. I can kind of submit that as a note. We can collaborate back and forth on kind of the progress of this activity. So on the, just to switch back on the other side, so now on the fulfillment side, or to look at this new request that came through, I'll go to the request items list. Second here. So here's my request record. And the first swim lane that I had in my process was to get manager approval. So I will see there's an approval awaiting here from Carla Hubble, who happens to be listed as the manager of our requester. So that's the first step. I'll go ahead and approve that just to kind of move this thing along. And the other thing I want to highlight too is you'll see this actual request is already, you'll see at the top here we got our information about what offering we want and the descriptions and details. And this one's already running that one commitment we had around access requests. So it's already, this one's already contextually relevant to our service, and it's going to go into our kind of metrics and achievements of our actual service commitments. So the next step after the approval was a task to basically set up the database and provide access. The actual assignment group was derived from that service. So again, the service definition and it's set here as the primary fulfillment group or support group for that service. We leverage that here in the workflow to route that to the right to that particular group, and the template is used to drive the details of what those requests or what should be set up as part of this activity. So they can close that task. And then the last step in the last two steps were really a certification or verification. So I'll give it a second to kind of refresh here. But so it should. Let me refresh the screen and see, make sure it's moved to the next step. So we did indeed close that. Oh, so there we are. So there's an activity that performs in that workflow to actually ask for the customer to get confirmation. This can be sent in an email and a response through email, or they can also perform this activity directly here in the portal. So I have some options here as the customer to say, no, I'm not satisfied, provide some feedback as to why I'm not satisfied, and push it back through the fulfillment chain. Or I can say, yes, I'm indeed satisfied, which then moves this thing to a completed status. And if you recall, the kind of last step of that kind of workflow was to subscribe the user as or register the user as a new subscriber to that service. So one of the things I should be able to see now if I go to My Services is I do indeed see Oracle for Windows now in my list of services. So I'm an active subscriber, which from a IT perspective is helpful, right? We can use this information to know that if there's issues or changes or other outages or other things contextually relevant to this service, we can communicate those directly to Alice to let her know that this impacts her because she is an actual subscriber of a specific offering and commitment. All right, so you can see those. Last thing I want to hit on is on the other side of this as a service owner. You remember I set myself up as the service owner for that Oracle for Windows service. So there is a view for me out here for Oracle or for services I own. And I've got abilities here to edit this or go to a dashboard. And on my dashboard page, this is where I can see some alerts. So I see an alert here that I have a new subscriber. I can see incidents pertain to my service, which is new and there isn't any. I do see that active request that has been fulfilled and delivered within our thresholds. I do see my subscribers. And I can also monitor and manage any of our commitments and our delivery to those particular targets. Any of my service feedback would also show up on this page, though we haven't had any yet. And then I've also lastly got options to plot some additional reports on here just to kind of complete my needs in managing this particular service. So let's see if that populates here. There we go. There's a couple of reports on here, and then my dashboard is complete. So that was kind of what I hope to cover today. I do hope this was hopeful and helpful in terms of sparking some thoughts on creating your own kind of service catalog solutions.
Hey, Jeff, thank you very much. I always learn something new when you do a demo. Even when I can't see it, and I'm only listening to it. So are we on the next step slide?
Yes, I just pulled that up.
Okay, thank you. So here's some possible next steps. from us. If you're interested in the advanced self-service catalog and portal that Jeff demonstrated, it is available as a fully functioning self-service demo. It's fun and easy to use. Over 500 people have signed up for it today. You can get your own login on our website. Just follow the front page banner, and you could be using it in a few minutes. Or, perhaps you're considering a broader service catalog initiative but aren't sure where to start. We do offer a one-day private catalog workshop on your site for up to 15 attendees. And the whole purpose is to educate your team, create a common language and direction for the group. And we have found you can save months of effort in consensus building and get your program moving. We think it's a great value at less than $4,000, including travel. Last, if you would like a copy of one of our guides, including our newly released Services Governance Guide, just reply via email, and we'll be in touch to get it to you. I think that's it for today, and let's open it up for questions if we have any, Steph.
We do. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'd like to start with a question that I got in. Actually, this person sent the question before the webinar even started. So, should people use the fulfillment group on the catalog item? If so, should the RITM carry over the value? What is the best way to do this?
So this is Jeff. I guess I covered that a little bit in terms of defining kind of who the primary support group is for a given service. So I would say from a general perspective, who should fulfill a service request if you can manage it as part of the configuration management database and as an attribute of a service or a service offering or some component, and leverage that as a way to drive how you route the work. That is preferable, because then basically any of your changes to who the primary support group is would fall under kind of a configuration management change, and therefore fall under change management and some of those governance that goes into that as well.
Okay, great, thanks. Jeff, another question for you. For the workflow, is it possible to integrate out to the system to provision the access and set up the database for the user?
Yeah, so certainly, like in the demo, I guess the main point would be on the demo I had an approval step, and then I had kind of a task to the database group to perform some of the setup activities, and I think the question's kind of asking, can we remove the task and integrate to a system that would actually do the provisioning for you? And certainly the answer is yes, and certainly an area that we look to automate as many things as we possibly can. I think Don did hit on a good point, though, that sometimes you need to evaluate the business value of that. Is it frequent enough? Is it sustainable enough? Does it, is it a moving target in terms of what you're trying to set up? And that would kind of govern or guide you in terms of whether or not it's something worth building as far as an integration or not. But certainly, if it's something we can achieve, we should set up automation where we can to remove some of those human activities.
Okay, great. And I'd like to remind everyone, if they have any questions, they can put them in the Q&A panel. I can see the Q&A panel now. So please be sure to send those to all participants, and I can allocate the questions. Jeff, I do have another one for you. Is there a limit on the number of different offerings?
From a ServiceNow technical perspective, no. And this is another point that Don hit on, too, in terms of the Happy Meals and kind of coming up with, what is probably best package for your consumers. So you don't want to overwhelm them with too many options and too many exceptions to the rule. You probably want to come up with your Happy Meals and your different offerings, and maybe manage some of those exceptions as exceptions to those Happy Meals, and but try to keep your number of offerings to a manageable sense, so people don't having to pick through too many choices when they're ordering or subscribing to a given service.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. Don, for you, I am interested in the balanced design concept. Do you have other examples of lights-out self-services you have built?
Yeah, there's all sorts of access requests and things that are based on role-driven authority, where sort of a lights-out self-service is a great fit, and we've done that. Truthfully, there are a lot of opportunities where the work just hasn't been re-examined and thought through, and there's a great deal of inefficiency in the delivery. which also, you know, is a great platform for self-service, Lights Out. One cool example of a Lights Out software store that we built for one client, which offers 200 software titles to 150,000 employees, and it includes full cost reimbursement at the point of purchase and software license tracking. And based upon the user's self-service activities and the desktops being managed, it is a totally unattended activity. IT only gets involved if something breaks. So that's a pretty cool example of it.
Great. Don, for you as well, most of our automations to date have been e-forms, which customers don't like very much. How can these be re-engineered?
That's a good question. We see a lot of e-forms because I think it's kind of what people have had available. You know, the problem with an e-form is it's not interactive, and it's a shotgun blast. You know, since it isn't intelligent, it asks for a bunch of information it may not need. Then the next time it asks the same stuff again. Right? So that's not a very good customer experience. When you're designing self-service, we're really using more of a kind of a branching tree concept, progressively narrowing the options based upon the self-service answers the customer provides. Customers like it because, in effect, we then don't ask dumb questions, right? But there's also a huge benefit to the providers as we can actually use that branching tree process to lead the customers to the happy meals, right? Which also can then become lights out services. So you can see the whole virtuous circle evolves that way.
Great, thanks, Don. Jeff, I think this question is probably for you. The question is, which ServiceNow version unlocks the most potential for Service Catalog? We are on Eureka. Should we look to move to Fuji or Geneva as soon as possible?
I mean, I think in general terms, the latest version provides probably the most potential in terms of all features options. But I will say a lot of what I showed today, and I was on a Fuji instance today, it has been available in your current Eureka version as well. And so you still have the portal ops, you still have the service portfolio and service definition. I think you probably have to drill in a little further to understand what specific things you're trying to accomplish with your service catalog and service catalog journey. As if you're looking to go down the path of, say, using the, I'm drawing a blank here, the service mapping that came from Nebula, what's that called now? Service Watch. If you're trying to use Service Watch, for example, yeah, that's fully baked inside of ServiceNow as part of Geneva, and that would be a compelling reason if you're looking to use that to go to Geneva first to make use of that platform change.
Okay, great. One last call for questions, and we did get a question from someone. They want to know where you all got your hats.
Ah, Amazon Prime, of course.
So,
great self-service.
Don, are you going to wear yours at Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner?
Am I ordering it from Amazon Prime?
No, I said, are you going to wear it on Thursday?
Oh yeah, absolutely I'm wearing it.
He's been wearing it here in the office this morning, so. Yes, and we're all reserving comment on that. So I think that's the end of our questions, and I do want to wrap it up to get us back on time with our little episode there. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I will get the recording and slides out to you no later than tomorrow. I do remind you to check our website. Go to the Resources tab at evergreensys.com. for an announcement for our December topics. We will have webinars in December, so please remember us after the long holiday weekend, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.